Welcome to He Changed the World from Forest Baptist Church, a series of talks about Jesus Christ from Mark's Gospel, recorded by me, David Last. Talk number 29, Embarrassment. Mark chapter 8, from verse 11 through to verse 21. When did you last make a fool of yourself? Do something silly and then realise others saw you. Start saying some words only to notice how ridiculous they are. Those moments come, don't they? When did you last make a fool of yourself? And how did you react? Smile and move on. Laugh at yourself a bit too loudly. Become irritable to deflect attention. Or did you just cringe with embarrassment? In Mark's Gospel, Jesus' disciples, the friends he's training, come out with something ridiculous. Now, in their defence, the circumstances they're operating in are difficult. Jesus is clashing badly with opponents who want to catch him out, and their techniques are devious. They claim simply to want to know the truth about Jesus, but in reality they are cynics who dislike everything he's about. And Jesus knows that. So there's tension in the air, and his trainees are feeling that. Stressful situations can lead to embarrassing mistakes for us, can't they? It's part of being human. Our heart is pumping, our mind is racing. We're trying to handle all that's going on and then become focused on the wrong thing. We get obsessed with an issue, a matter which feels really important, but we're overthinking and we end up embarrassing ourselves. That's Jesus' friends. As the group set off in a boat, they're discussing, of all things, bread. It sounds comical, but they're deadly serious. Why? Well, because Jesus' opponents have challenged him to prove himself. And recently his team have seen his power displayed by him feeding vast crowds with a miracle. So maybe he'll want to do that again. But if he does, well, then he'll ask them for a small pack of loaves, because that's what he needed the last two times, but they've only got one loaf. So what's he going to say then to them? This is typical of worries we can have. In uncertain situations, we try to read other people's minds to know what they're about to say. We spend time worrying about theoretical circumstances and how we're not ready for them. We go through imaginary versions of conversations we're going to have. What if she asks me for that and I haven't got it? What if he asks me if I've done that task and I have to admit I haven't? What shall I say? Jesus' disciples are on edge. And then he triggers them with an odd warning. Watch out, he says, for the yeast of the Pharisees and the king. He's using a metaphor, a very powerful one, a very powerful image. His opponents, both political and religious, are spreading words and ideas which are harmful. And although there's only a few of them compared with the crowds coming to hear Jesus, those words could cause havoc. They're like yeast. Just a little makes a big difference, makes the loaf rise up. Everything could turn, and Jesus' message could be lost. His friends need to keep listening carefully to him. But they don't hear that warning. They just hear yeast and spin off into a panic about the bread. I told you, they say to one another. I told you, he'd want more than one loaf. To calm them down and get them thinking clearly, Jesus has to intervene, sharply. What are you talking about? He says. The 2 feasts he laid on, they weren't about, in the end, bread or power. They were about him, as God's king, come to save from sin and death. He's really not interested in doing another bread miracle. That wasn't the point. Bigger ideas are in play. They need, his team, they need to focus on learning the truth from him, and not being distracted or, worse, led astray. The real issue here is knowing God and what he's doing through Jesus. They should forget the stupid loaves. What do you think? When we embarrass ourselves in this way, it can make us defensive, can't it? Especially in regard to God. Maybe in the past you've had ideas about God which now seem ridiculous. Just the foolishness of a child or a teenager. You naively believed what others told you. You wonder how you could have been so stupid. Well, maybe you're right. Or maybe you're not. Either way, don't let that embarrassment keep you from finding the truth today. Our hang-ups have a way of deflecting us from knowing God. But Jesus promises that if you give him your full attention and think carefully about what he said and what he did, you'll find the truth. And it will change you in a wonderfully good way forever. Thank you for watching. Have a listen as the Bible passage is now read out. Think about it, pray about it, and I hope you'll return for the next talk.
Mark chapter 8, verses 11 to 21. The Pharisees came and began to question Jesus. To test him, they asked him for a sign from heaven. He sighed deeply and said, "Why does this generation ask for a sign? Truly, I tell you, no sign will be given to it." Then he left them, got back into the boat, and crossed to the other side. The disciples had forgotten to bring bread, except for one loaf they had with them in the boat. "Be careful," Jesus warned them. "Watch out for the yeast of the Pharisees and that of Herod." They discussed this with one another and said, "It is because we have no bread." Aware of their discussion, Jesus asked them, "Why are you talking about having no bread? Do you still not see or understand? Are your hearts hardened? Do you have eyes but fail to see, and ears but fail to hear? And don't you remember, when I broke the 5 loaves for the 5,000, how many basketfuls of pieces did you pick up?" 12, they replied. "And when I broke the 7 loaves for the 4,000, how many basketfuls of pieces did you pick up?" They answered, 7. He said to them, "Do you still not understand?